April 15th of 1892, a woman was born named Corrie ten Boom in the Netherlands. Her father was a watchmaker who was notoriously obsessive about fixing the watches he was working on and the clocks he was working on. And they had to have one of his daughters working in the shop to make sure that people got charged adequately at the end, because he would just not be paying attention to the money part of it. And so initially they had Betsy, the older sister, working in the shop. She gets ill, and Corrie takes a shift working at the shop, and it works so much better to have this woman Corrie working there that they end up having Betsy do the homemaking stuff, and Corrie stays in the shop after that. Initially, she does all the accounting work, but eventually she starts getting into watchmaking herself, and she's like the first, like, somehow credentialed, skilled watchmaker in the Netherlands who was a woman. She also was a very, very, very Christian woman. And her father was very Christian, and her sister was very Christian. And in the Netherlands, as the Nazis came in, they began working to protect what they saw as God's people. Some of those were Jewish people. A lot of the ten Boom family protection was about disabled people, because the Nazis were pretty much, they were rounding up disabled people with as much vigor as they were rounding up Jewish people. And Corrie saw disabled people as like God's people and saw protecting them as vital. So they begin working with resistance fighters in the Netherlands, and an architect ends up building a secret room in Corrie's bedroom, which becomes known as the hiding place. The hiding place is a place that they can have up to 6 adults living in that home with them. And they had like a buzzer, and if the buzzer went off, then everybody knew to go into that secret passage. She also was part of getting food, because all the food was rationed, and there were these ration books, right? And she goes to the guy who's in charge of passing out the ration books only to people who were allowed them, which was not Jewish people. And she goes and asks for her ration books. And he says, he knows her, he's friends with her in the community. He says, "How many do you need?" And she said that there were 5 people that were allowed to have ration books at her house. And she says that she meant to say 5, that her plan was to say 5. And the words that came out of her mouth were 100. And the guy looked at her and then gave her 100 of these ration books. These are like food cards. And then she began distributing them to everybody who needed food, because he'd given them to her because she asked, and she was like a Christian woman in the Netherlands. And so then everybody was able to get food with these food cards. By the time she was picked up by the SS, SS knew that she had helped 8 Jewish people escape. And she doesn't actually say how many in the interviews that she talks about this, but she says the number was much higher. And it seems like the number was much higher, right? When she was picked up, there were actually 6 people in the hiding place in her room. And later a message was sent to her in the camp that said, "The watches in your cabinet are safe," which meant those people that you had left there have been relocated. So when she was taken by the SS, she had 6 people in this hiding space, and she was taken away, but those people were not discovered. So she ends up at the camp. She ends up at Ravensbrück. I don't know. Y'all will tell me in the comments how I'm wrong. My Ozark's showing. And she ends up at the camp. Her sister, Betsy, is also at the same camp. Her father's taken to a different camp, and he dies within 10 days because he's older and frail. The sisters survive, and they're interrogated repeatedly at the camp. And Corrie says that her sister, especially, would go into these interrogations, and during the interrogations would pray over the SS officers. And that one of the guys who had been assigned to them, she said 5 separate times she prayed over him, and eventually got him to like accept these prayers over him. And that guy ends up burning some of the evidence that these sisters had done the thing, right? Which is like pretty incredible. Betsy dies right before Corrie is released from the camp. Betsy dies 12 days before. Corrie is released and spends the rest of her life writing and testifying and creating space for how God worked through her in this situation to protect the people, and telling the story repeatedly. There's like video interviews from the 70s of her sharing this as Christian testimony, but also sharing the details of this. And specifically, in a lot of her writings, she talks about how this applied to the disabled people that she was protecting. That the way that the people with disabilities were being targeted. That she, at one point, was in a testimony with somebody at one of the camps, and somebody asked her something about her protection of people with disabilities, and she replied, they are as much of one of God's people as a watchmaker, and then paused and said, or a lieutenant. So yeah, happy birthday to Corrie ten Boom, and may we all remember her.